and welcome to Migration Season 3, where we are now continuing our talks about lucid sex. That is, having sexual interaction in the lucid dream state. I've already produced one video where I kind of gave you a little bit of background and some philosophy to get us started so that we could jump into this area. And now the next couple of episodes is going to be dedicated specifically on sex in the lucid state or the astral state. And today we are going to be talking to another member of the Lucid Hive. Her name is Rachel Olson. I will give you all of the links and all of her information below. And Rachel and I, this is just an unscripted conversation we had about our personal experiences with encountering sexual activity on the lucid, in the lucid state. So it's a really interesting conversation. And as I mentioned before in my other video, I am going to do a warning to everyone that if conversations kind of bother you that are really frank on the topic of sex and sexuality, you may want to skip this one. I know I said that in my last video, but this one is I really didn't need to say that in the last video because it didn't really apply too much. We were just really kind of talking about just the basics and the preamble to these conversations, but it definitely more so applies with this interview and the next episode that I'm doing. So enjoy. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me, of course, personally. You can always do that in the comments below, or like I said, I'm going to give you all the links to Rachel Olson as well if you have any questions for her. And she has her own channel on YouTube and a website. Again, I will give you all that information here. So without further ado, let's get into it. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. We're going to do that one more time. I actually, you know what I started adding? By the way, I started adding my bloopers sometimes to the end of my videos. Nice. And people, and because I was editing them out, I was just tossing them away for a while, right? And then I just started as a joke. I just started posting them every once in a while on Facebook. And everyone's like, dude, you've got to add these into your videos. Like, these are fantastic. And I hadn't even thought of it. I'm like, who wants to see me screw up? I'm like, I don't know. It just didn't seem funny. And the people are like, no, we like to see you screw up. I'm like, okay, well, I've got lots of material. Then. Fantastic. Okay, let's try this one more time. Hello, everyone. This is Ian Jaded from Migration. Today, we are joined with the lovely Rachel Olson from Sacramento, California. And she runs her own video log, just kind of like I do on YouTube. And she's been a lucid dreamer for quite some time. And she's a member of what's called the Lucid Hive. And that's just a conglomerate of lucid dreamers. Then you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, probably Twitter, right? Twitter?
Hey.
I don't know.
I'm create a Twitter right now.
Oh, I have no idea. You can find us on, you can find us on Twitter. Yeah. We're going to give you links to her and everything else like that, but so you can find her and we're going to get to know her a little bit more. So hello, Rachel.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. How are you? It is morning time for you in California.
Yes, almost noon, but we're doing good.
Wonderful.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So we are talking about lucid dream sex, and I just released my first, I think I just mentioned, I released one video so far at this point. It depends on how folks are watching this series. I did release one video that kind of gives a background to all of this. We don't really dive into any of the nitty gritty, any of the sex stuff or anything like that. And I already lost a couple of followers. So that tells me who's on my channel. Like, yeah, screw you for doing anything sex related. So I'm like, awesome. Yay. So anyway.
That's that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, so let's go into the background of lucid dreaming first before we get into the specifics. How long have you been lucid dreaming? What is your background with that? How did you get into this? Can you tell us that story?
All right. So I've been a lifelong dreamer ever since I can remember growing up. And lucid dreaming started for me 5 years ago. And that was when I lost my best friend. And she started appearing in my dreams, and that's when I started to trigger lucidity as, whoa, like, how are you here? And my brain just started what, firing off. And that's when I started becoming conscious in my dreams. So I
Yes.
was like, wait, okay, I'm dreaming right now. And it became a regular thing. She would come to my dreams and visit me, and I would tell her, Megan, we're dreaming. And after that, it just kind of all unfolded. I created a Twitter account to tweet my dreams, and that's when Reese from the Lucid Hive found me and asked me if I wanted to join the group. So started on there and then created my YouTube channel, and things have just kind of taken off. And seeing my friend Megan was the first part of lucid dreaming, and after that it just became a regular thing. So I started flying around in my dreams. I started doing like the Inception stuff where I would fold the dream like together and it would be parallel, the sky would be the exact same as the bottom, like
Exactly.
everything. So it started becoming more of a hobby, and I just got really interested in it. And then it would be a lot of different insight, start seeing, because once I become lucid in dreams, I'm able to take a look around at the environment and see what am I dreaming about, see different dream symbols. And then with my tattoos, I got a whole sleeve and some, and that's what I've used as reality checks to keep the lucid dreams coming. So I notice if I don't have certain tattoo, it just boom, right then and there I become lucid. So avid lucid dreamer of 5 years.
Awesome. So I've heard of that before, the idea of using the tattoos, because anytime that you that's something we talk about a lot, several times on my channel, that when you hold your attention to anything in a lucid state, eventually it will kind of shift, or it's not exactly the same way that you expect to find it after a while. Maybe at first it is. That's why I'll often use my hands first, and I find that my hands are always there in my lucid state, and they say that that seems to be a fairly universal quality, that your hands are there. And at first, when I'll lift my hand up in front of my face in a lucid state, at first it may look for a few moments just like my hand, so I won't think anything, so I have to hold my attention just for a few moments, and then it will shift. But I do have some tattoos, but they're up on my upper arm, so I'd kind of have to do I don't know, I guess I'd have to, if I had something on my, like right on my hand or something, I suppose I would try to do that.
Yeah, my alien is the one that always gets me, and I'll look at my hands as well. And I used to do the finger induction trick. So if my finger went through my hand, I know I was lucid dreaming as well. And I would look at my hands for a bit, and then I had like a 6 fingers, or I only
Yep.
had 4 fingers. And then the tattoo is the one that really sticks with me, and that helps a lot. There's so many different methods, and I just find making it personal is my breakthrough. That's how I'm able to continually lucid dream.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. You've got to find something that works for you. I mean, the hand thing is what I always press, because like I said, it's the one thing that seems to, if nothing else, it's going to work for most people. I've not come across anyone who's tried the hand technique where because our hands are our main tools that we use to, to interact with the world. So that's like a real psychological connection for us. So it seems like our hands are always there. The only caveat I can possibly think to that is if for some reason you were born literally without hands, like, and that was not the way, that wasn't what you used to interact with the world. You used, something else or whatever. So, but beyond that, I would say that your hands seem to always be there. But and when you mentioned Inception, I liked the idea of what they used in Inception, where they had the little totems. But what I
Right.
often found is that if I had some little trinket, or some little token or something like that on me, I found that that was not always on me in my lucid dream. That wasn't always just sitting in my pocket or something like that. So it wasn't reliable. I needed something that was totally something that I could always bring up in front of my attention and go, I'm going to stare at that and figure it out. Like what is the state of my reality? So that was
Yeah,
my
we
thing.
had a ring I wore for several years, and in one dream state, I knew I was supposed to be wearing a ring, but I couldn't figure it out. I was like, where'd it go? And I found that the tattoos are so permanent, they're not
Yep.
going anywhere. That was able to stick in my brain more than even having fake nails on the regular.
Yep.
And it just was more of a confusion, but it didn't quite trigger lucidity. So I had to find my niche, my thing that worked.
I like the tattoos. That's what I'm saying, because it's such a permanent thing. And if you've got something, especially on your hand, that you have to lift your hand up in front of your face anyway, you're right there. So
Yeah,
perfect. I love it. So tell me, what is in your own words? What do you? Of course, it's going to be your own words. Why do people say that? I have no idea. what do you feel is the main difference? Like when you started lucid dreaming, obviously you were like, this is different than any other dream state, but for me at first, I started lucid dreaming when I was like maybe like 11 or so, somewhere around there. And I didn't really consider that question for many years later until they really kicked in again. It's like they stopped for a while, which we're going to talk about because most of my like sex kind of dreams were when I was like going through puberty and whatnot when I was younger. But I was a raging hormonal young boy who didn't even really think about, hey, what is the philosophical implications of all this? It was just like I just knew that I was in a state where I had some agency to go and act and kind of make decisions where I wasn't in a normal dream state. But for you, what was it that that really triggered you to go, this is different. This is something that it's not like a normal dream state.
The normal dream state, I feel that it's like watching a movie. When I wake up, I'm
Yes.
remembering what I've seen. Where when I become lucid, it feels like a video game or virtual reality where I'm able to take control of it, or
Yes.
at least be more aware rather than watching a movie play out before me. It's
Perfect.
I'm dreaming, and then it's like I kind of have a little bit of control over it.
So what do you suppose is it that makes someone lucid? I mean, obviously it sounds like this was triggered fairly spontaneously for you. What was it? Now at first you said you were seeing a friend of yours that had passed, and you and I have talked a little bit in the past before. I've had the same experiences where I was running into people who had passed away, close friends or family or whatnot, and that would it would kind of stop me and go, wait a minute, none of this is right. I know this person shouldn't be here. So
Mm.
that was the thing. So was that the main thing that was triggering you? And obviously that's not the thing now that always kicks it off. Clearly there's something else going on that's kind of waking you up. Well, what can you talk about that a bit? What's going on for you?
Well, when it first started out, yeah, it was Megan seeing her and realizing, wait a second, this isn't real life, and being able to decipher the two from the waking world and my dream state. And in that same first year of lucid dreaming, that's when I really got down flying, and kind of I was even Iron Man in one time where I was like trying to take off with my special flying boots, and like I couldn't quite get it right where the right one was going off, but I couldn't get the left one, so I still felt imbalanced. And as things progressed, I'm able to harness it more, but it kind of goes. I felt like once I got it's like riding a bike in my
Mm,
experience. As at first, like I had my training wheels and I didn't quite know what I was doing, but I was riding this bike of lucid dreaming. And then once I got it down, a knack for it, it's like the training wheels came off. And then whenever I want to whenever I become lucid, it's like I'm picking up a bike and I'm riding, and I don't have to think about it. It just happens. I just know. So I
yes.
guess that's the best way I can put it for my
No,
experience.
that's excellent. And like I said, I like the idea of how it is very much like a movie where it's like there's a script that's running. You can't really control it. It's like there's a story playing out and you're like, whatever. For me, I only become lucid once I'm able to pull back from that movie. I can pull back from the story and go, wait a minute, none of this is actually happening. None of this is actually, and then, of course, now that I've been doing this for years and years, that's become such a fascinating philosophical point that there is power in pulling back from the story, and I realize that applies to, of course, our daily life as well. The more that we can kind of pull back from the narrative that's going on in the stories, that there is power in that, because then we have more agency. Otherwise we're just kind of following a script. We're just kind of running through a little, we're just trying to solve a problem. We're just kind of focused on trying to get out of some situation or whatever, and we're not really awake. We're not really conscious of what's going on.
In a robot mode where,
Yeah.
yeah, taking a step back, and yeah, that power like of peace and just tranquility. Like I find so much uh, enlightenment in dreams, and when I
Yes.
become lucid, it takes it to the next level.
Absolutely. The more and more I've been doing this, I'm more and more convinced that lucid dreaming is like kind of like training wheels away a little bit for becoming more enlightened during the day. In fact, that's kind of like I've mentioned this several times on my channel and other programs that I actually don't lucid dream all that much anymore. And I didn't know why that was. And I realized it's like because I've moved the bulk of my attention for this level of consciousness into my daily world now. It's like now I mostly just kind of sleep normally for the most part. Not always. I mean, I still really, I'm down to maybe a couple of times a month where I'll really go through these really intense lucid dream states. But for the most part, all of that attention now is like I'm using that though all those tricks during the day. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it's been changing my life rapidly, definitely. In a lot of different ways. But let's get back to sex because we're definitely that is the main thing that I want to get onto because it's such a it does bring up so many other questions and it about who we are as sensual feeling beings and what it and desire and our wants and our needs and it's so it's one of those things you're never going to unravel completely. But like I said, for me, when I started realizing that I could kind of explore sexuality was when I was a little kid. I was young, 11, 12 years old, and I was able to kind of it was the way I describe it in one of my videos is that it was kind of like handing a 12-year-old boy like a full high-tech virtual reality system that has every option available to call up anything you ever want. Well, a 12-year-old boy is going to be calling up mostly naked women or whatever they're attracted to. I mean, in my case, it was, so I spent most of my lucid dreaming just kind of like, it's like I'd become lucid and I would be aware of what was going on. And then I would just kind of like immediately like kind of run out of my dream house and into the dream neighborhood. And I'd go looking for girls, I mean, that was kind of like, yeah. And there was just no really I didn't really have anything where I was stopping and going, huh, well, what's going on here? What is this all about? It was like, I could do anything here. Like that was all that I cared about.
There's
So,
no consequence zone.
right. And there's like, you doesn't appear to be any consequences or anything like that. And again, some people have, there's a lot of lucid dreamers. In fact, like we've said before, Reese, who runs the Lucid Hive, and he's been working with this stuff for a long, long time. He has some rather strange attitudes about that as well. And he has some, maybe I'll link some articles if anyone's interested. He writes articles about how he feels that there really are consequences to, having sexual interactions with characters in lucid dream states. And he hasn't convinced me so far is all I can say, but I find it an interesting position, if nothing else, something that definitely deserves merit. But so let's talk about you. What are your experiences in that realm? Where did you jump into those kind of areas first?
I kind of wish I knew about it longer. Growing up, like I said before, I have had very vivid dreams and I had plenty of sex dreams growing up, but none lucid until recently in the past 5 years.
Okay.
Since then, I've had quite a few experiences and they're always different. It's not the same ever. And it's just kind of keeping me on my toes. And
Okay.
there was one dream in particular, the very first one I ever had when I became lucid. And I was hanging out with the lead singer of Bastille. And I was like, oh, I'm dreaming right now. And I'm like, hey, Dan, like, let's have sex.
Right.
And we go in the bedroom and like I'm on top of him and I'm thinking like, okay, like cool, like I'm lucid, I can control it. And then I turned myself off. I was like, oh God, this isn't that like exciting anymore because I'm controlling it. I know what's going to happen. And as the dream just was in my head, and the next thing I know, half of his body turns into an octopus and like the tentacles go around me and I'm just like, well, that was unexpected. And we just kind of went along with it.
And okay. So you didn't like that wasn't a deal breaker then, huh?
No, it wasn't. I figured when I'm lucid, I like to go with what the dream is doing.
Fantastic.
If anything, it turned me on more in a weird way.
Cool. But I like it.
I was just watching King Arthur this past week on Netflix, and there's like in the water, there's like this creepy like octopus guy, and then he's got his like sexy octopus women, and I was like, that's low-key like my dream that I had a couple of years ago.
Nice. The anime fan crowd will be very pleased. Fantastic.
Well, the anime crowd too. I've had definitely a lot of cartoon dreams like Naruto and Kakashi Sensei. I think is cute in a cartoon way. And me and him have had a few dreams together, and then even like Demon Slayer, just like older versions of like uh,
Hold on, wait. So does it look like a cartoon?
yeah, but
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I don't see my hands. Like I don't know. I never looked in a reflection or a mirror in one of those dreams, so it was as if I entered their realm of anime.
Okay.
Yeah. So I never got to see myself as a cartoon.
Okay. But
Pretty cool.
everything else is
Yeah,
like very
100%.
cartoon like and whatnot. So the when so shape shifting, that is very common, especially for me at least. I find when I suddenly get more and more like I'm trying to chase after some sexual high or something like that, or some kind of, like, oh, I'm getting very, aroused. I really want this thing to happen. And that's when often things will start shifting or they'll kind of fall apart. And it's not like the whole, sometimes you'll just kind of fall out of the lucid dream entirely. I find that that happens so often, and not just with sex. I mean, that can happen with flying dreams where it's just like, it's like you get so, I don't know, like overwhelmed with stimulation, and I'll just get tossed out. And it's not like I physically wake up, but I'll just get tossed out of the lucid state, and I just kind of, I don't know, I go into the void, into darkness. But in lucid states, like during sex, especially, have you seen that a lot? Is that a common theme for you, or things? It's one thing and then it shifts, or the person shifts, or like, in the middle of the sex act, something will change, or was that the only time that happened?
That was the only one that was like them shape shifting. I've shape shifted from like a human to a dog, and
Oh,
also into a guy. So I've been a guy fucking a girl before plenty of times in my dreams as well, that were just like orgies. Like, I don't
yeah.
know
And
who
so
I
you had a penis, I'm assuming, right? I mean, you had, okay,
am. And
interesting.
I always said I always want to do the elephant helicopter, and I did that in my dream. It was so great. So I did like, even almost feel the weight of it too.
Awesome. I love it. I can feel my followers dropping, but also going up at the same time right now. It's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gaining people and losing people. It's awesome. No, that's good. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
So you shape, yeah, I've definitely had that as well, where I shape shift. And especially I remember so many, again, most of the majority of the bulk of my sex dreams were all going through puberty, having access to that realm. And I would imagine that is probably the case for most people who had access to lucid dreaming when they were going through those initial stages of like, you know, who am I? What is sexuality? And you're horny like all the time, but you don't really know what to do with it, and you don't know anything about sex. And I would have that constantly where things would just fall apart. It's like I would be with some woman, and by the way, and I mentioned this also in one of my other videos, that looking back, it's very strange for me. Now, you had your dreams, sounds like your lucid sex dreams later. For me, I started going into these states, like I said, when I was like 11 or 12, where I had no experience whatsoever with sexuality in real life. I mean, I didn't even grow up around sisters. I didn't see like naked women or anything like that. I mean, my parents had like network public television. I didn't know. I was very not sheltered. I didn't lead a sheltered life, but it's not like today where there's the internet and you can just go and,
Oh yeah.
search to your heart's content of what's going on. Like, but in retrospect, my sex dreams were detailed and accurately down to the anatomy, detailed, accurate. And I still don't really know. There's theories I have, like why that, maybe that's information that's just locked into us as humans. Like what, just like survival skills, we understand what sex is. We understand what anatomy is on a deep level. And somehow maybe in our lucid states, all of that gets unlocked or something. I don't really know. But in those states, I would be chasing after some woman or something like that. Or, we'd be having sex, and then she would possibly, sometimes she'd just vanish. Like she would just like, she would just vanish altogether, or she would, turn into something else. She would like change shapes, change forms. And sometimes it was into something unpleasant. And I was like, oh God, and I would know what's going on. I'm like, I can't keep my focus. But as you said, sometimes I would shapeshift too. Like, I've had things where, suddenly lower half of my body was just like gone or something like that. And so what do you, any insight into that, or any theories? What do you suppose is going on there when there's this shape shifting going on? What do you think?
It makes me think that like anything is possible. So
Yes.
when we're in the dream realm, you may not think firsthand, I'm going to shapeshift, but yet when it happens, you just kind of go along with it, and then it becomes a possibility from then on, and you're able to hack into that power, be in tune. And when you said growing up and you were a kid going through puberty, it made me think of just last year when I was pregnant and my
Mm.
hormones were whew, and
Oh
my
yeah.
heater was like up here, and like there was some days I would just wake up and like grab my vibrator and I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, like
Yeah.
instantly like in the mood all the time. And it helped my, I almost like helped my emotion or my hormones balance out, because I
Oh, I'm
felt
sure.
like I did like reach an O, you know, in my
Yeah.
dream. So
We can say orgasm. It's okay. Hell with it.
I
I
don't know.
just
I'll just
at this
give
point,
up.
I don't care anymore. There are some weird things that you can't say on YouTube now that are like, will my channel's not monetized yet. I'm not even anywhere near that. I don't know if I ever will be. So right now I just don't care what so you're all good with whatever. But yeah, orgasms. So you mentioned orgasms. Is that something that's happened in your lucid states where you felt that you reached orgasm? And if so, do you feel that that's actually a physical orgasm, or is it possible that there is just a dream version of an orgasm? So, because for a guy, we know when we've woken up, right? Like
What?
there's no question whatsoever. Like, oh, I that was not just in my head. I've got a mess on my hands. So, yeah,
Or you guys wake up with a boner.
yeah, right, totally.
So I have reached an orgasm in my dream before, and I have woken up, and I knew it was definitely tied to, um, but it wasn't typical lucid dreaming sex. It was kind of like okay, so I'm in the house, it's empty, and I become lucid, and this was actually when I was pregnant. So I became lucid, and I said, I'm gonna find somebody to fuck.
Yes.
And just kind of how you were when you were a kid, like you walked out of the house. That's exactly it. I walked out of the house.
But that's what it's like. It's like you just suddenly go on the prowl, right? You just go on the prowl, like I'm going to hunt now, and that's what it's like. It's. I don't know about you, but I can't just manifest someone in front of me. It's like I have to find them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your experience as well? When you're like, I'm going to go find somebody to go have sex with. Is that what it's like?
That's what it was in this
Okay.
dream.
All right.
Normally they're either already there and I become lucid and it
Yes.
happens, or I've manifested it a few times as well.
Okay.
My dreams, you know. But this dream in particular, I'm walking outside and I set the intention in my mind, and as I'm walking through the grass, it becomes that gladiator scene where like the grass starts like sweeping on my thighs, and it just kind of wraps around my thighs, and I fall down, and it's not even a typical sexual moment. It's like I become overwhelmed like with like so much stimulation, and
Yeah.
everything, like the trees start morphing like I took a bunch of shrooms, but yet it
Mm.
wasn't a intercourse orgasm. It was like my whole body was just in tune. It felt like all my chakras aligned, and I was just like in
Right.
that moment. And I did have an orgasm, but it was mental.
It
So
was more
I
of a
don't know,
mental thing, right?
mental thing. So when I woke up that day, I was just like, oh wow, like that was like real, felt real. Like my body was definitely in tune with my dream, but yet it wasn't a typical guy or girl sex dream.
And that's awesome. And I've heard of other women talking about that. That has never been my case. Where every time there's anything close to an orgasm or there's sexuality, there is a female there. There's some or something that's female like. I mean, there's been some dreams where it's like there's some, like you said, like there's like maybe a cartoonish version of a person or something like that, but there's always a female presence on some level. But you're not the first woman who I've heard say that they've had like orgasmic type of sensations in a lucid dream state where it's not really specifically lucid or sexual imagery, where it's just like, like there's just sort of like energy rising and whatnot. And that's kind of, like you said, that to me, that so totally goes back to the idea of, the kundalini rising up along the chakras, and, or prana, whatever you want to call it. There's so many different ways to look at that. But yeah, and you feel like as it starts at the base of the body, it is a very sexual feeling no matter what. I mean, and I guess I would say that I've had that in meditations on some level, where it's like, once that energy is rising at first, there is a very sexual thing. And if, and that first started happening for me, I was like, man, I almost feel like I want to go have sex. I should call my girlfriend, or, masturbate or something like that. But, but if you just kind of let it go and you don't really go act on it, it'll rise up, and then it'll go into like higher realms of consciousness and whatnot. And that's
right. And in that moment, I felt like, okay, I can still find someone. But once I surrendered, it was just like orgasm took off. I
nice.
was like, okay.
That's interesting. So you're able to, so you said you've manifested people. That's one thing I've not been able to do, because that is something, believe me, I've tried many times. Like, oh, I'm just going to manifest, like, my perfect sexual fantasy right in front of me. Right. And I've never been able to do that. It's always that I discover that person. Like, I have to go open a door.
That's what I was just about to say. I thought about the hot guy in my head that was that day. And I opened the door, like the front door, and there he was, and he came inside, and then boom. It was just like, but it didn't really appear right before me. I've had different dreams, not sex dreams, where that's happened, and shape-shifting dreams that were more not related to this topic, but in the fact of manifesting who I want to sleep with, I would open the door and there they were.
And apparently that's common. And every time I hear something that there's these common themes with a lot of lucid dreamers, I always have to go, I'm like, okay, so that's not just me. There seems to be some sort of universal quality about that. And I wonder, again, I don't know, but that is the world that we live in. We live in a world where when we change locations, there is a door that we have to go through, right? So there's a lot of opening doors in our lives. Like, to go into my room, I got to open my door. To go into the grocery store, there's a door that you walk through. So it would make sense that our minds have not been tuned to just making things appear. Although in lucid dream states, I'm able to work with materials. Like, I can take an object and I can shape it into anything that I want to. That's not a problem for me at all. But if I'm dealing with something that is like a person, I have to go like hunt that person down. Like, I have to discover them on some level.
They're out there. I've thought it, so they're there, but they're not in front of me.
All right. So any other kind of crazy lucid dreams? Anything? I love the octopus guy. That's awesome. I love it. Anything else that has stood out for you that it's just that you want to, as therapy, get off your chest here?
Like, let me just confess all my
confess everything.
Man, I know I wrote some stuff down to try to help my memory. I'm gonna see if, because I know there's.
Are you good at remembering your lucid dreams, by the way? Or do those like vanish for you?
I am, but as far as dream recall overall, I could improve. That's why I started the Twitter initially. So I would just like write down bits of my dreams. That way I would help myself remember more later. But
Okay.
when I'm lucid in that moment, I am able to retain most of it.
Yes.
But last week I had a dream and I read a message and I woke up and I couldn't remember what I read. I know everything else about the dream visually, but the words, I said them in the dream. I was like, retain this, and woke up. I'm like, I lost it.
That's so common. I've had that so many times where I remember something and there's a specific message or something I want to remember, and it's just gone.
Oh,
it's just
remember.
Gone. Yeah.
Okay,
Totally.
so I have my little list here.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, kind of what you were saying with Reese in the beginning, how like there's some consequences to it.
Yeah. Yes.
Sex dreams, I feel like I still have this moral code where I feel like this isn't right. And it was, I'd say like I was in my dream, but it felt like sleep paralysis where I couldn't move. And there was this dark entity that came over me, like probably a demon. And he was trying to, turn me on. And I was just like, this doesn't feel right. And I was like, no. And then he ended up going down on me. And I was just like, okay, yeah. Like once I gave him the green light, he just went to town. But I woke up feeling like kind of dirty. I was like, it didn't feel like, I don't know. It
Like
was
you did you feel like wrong? Like I kind of communed with something that was not
felt like I
a
went to the
good
dark
thing.
side.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Not like horrible, but yet it's like I would never hook up with that person in real life, but I made an exception, almost like I had drunk goggles on in my dream, but yet I was like, no one's gonna know, just do it. But I felt like that entity was like, haha, I got you. But
Yeah. Wow.
so I don't know. I,
So have you ever been in a relationship, like a committed relationship, and you've had a like a either even just regular maybe a normal sex dream, but I guess to me it'd be more relevant if it's a lucid sex dream. Have you ever been in a because that's what Reese again had talked about. And I know I keep bringing up Reese. I'm going to have to throw a link to him and a photo of him now because I've mentioned his name a few times. But
we love
that
you.
the idea that gosh, I'm in this relationship and now I just went and had sex with this other person. Have you ever been in that situation and ever sensed any sort of like guilt on any level or like, man, this isn't right? Or
If I did, I didn't feel guilty because I don't recall. But
yeah,
my long-term relationships were before I was a lucid dreamer, and I had
okay.
a few flings. But with the guys recently, they would have been like, "Oh, tell me more. Like, what'd you dream about?" Like, they would have been turned on by it. I don't think they would have mind. But
That's
if I,
where I would be. Yeah, totally. If
yeah,
I was dating someone who on the other end, I think that's the only way to be fair about it. It's like, hey, as long as it's okay with me, then I would have to make sure it was totally okay if she did the same,
right. Because
and
it's
that's
like,
how my attitude would be. I'd be curious, like, so
yeah,
tell me about it.
it'd be different if we're setting the intention like, oh, I don't like my person, I'm gonna hook up with other people. But you never know. It depends on the quality of that relationship, with like the trust, and if it's an open relationship, or I don't know. I mean, that one's kind of a gray area for me because I just haven't had to worry about it.
Cool. Yeah, that would be my attitude. The only time I've started feeling not good about something, and this is a whole other discussion it's another rabbit hole, but I actually didn't. Maybe I'll link an article to it if somebody is interested. I was using an avatar for a brief amount of time. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this. I've done some videos on this before. For a while, to just long story short, I was having some trouble. I was in my lucid state for so long. Like when I started really getting into lucid dreaming, I was about 19, really 19 or 20. And I was lucid dreaming sometimes for hours every night, again and again and again. And what I was finding is that my ability to do, you could say, supernatural things in those states was becoming more and more complicated because I was spending almost as much time in my lucid state as I was in my normal waking state. And so I'm like, it's like it was starting to become a mental barrier for me. So I created an avatar who did not suffer from those problems, if that makes sense. So I basically created essentially a character sheet of this person, of this character that was like this winged God sort of character who did not suffer from, who could do anything. So all I would do, I would go into a lucid state. And if I was like, I'm having trouble flying and I feel like, or I can't walk through walls as easily as I could before, I would just go, oh, well, I don't know, I would just kind of call out, I am this character, and I would literally shapeshift into this character. After a while, that character kind of got away from me. And I felt that it started digging into the darkest, most animalistic instincts of humanity, so to speak. And it was like after a while, it's like I lost control of it. And it was kind of going on, raping and pillaging sort of things after a while, like violence, and which I would love to talk about violence in dreams too. We don't have the time to go into that, but it was getting to the point where I was like, I had to release this thing. I was like, okay, I'm done. And it actually like, it felt like it flew out of my body, like, like a typical kind of possession sort of thing. And I never saw it again. I said, I'm done. I don't want to have anything to do with this. But that
Yeah.
was the only time where I felt, okay, I don't feel good about this. This isn't, you know,
It's
this is tapping into some really dark stuff that I wasn't, and I was also younger too. This was like, again, I was probably in my 20s or so. And, maybe at this point I'd have a different perspective on it, but I was like, no, I can't, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, on that note, I've had dreams where I've been the victim. Maybe I watch too much true crime shows, but
Right.
where I've been being almost raped
Yeah.
and I become lucid and I brutally murdered a guy. I was like, get the fuck off me. And like I
Right.
felt blood on my face and everything. It was insane.
Oh
But
yeah.
I felt so violated, but yet nothing happened. And it was just a lot of post-apocalyptic dreams where like you're hiding, living in a like your area, and then like these guys come through and like pillage the villages, you know, rape the
Right.
women. And I just
Yes.
have those dreams where yeah, it really, you wake up with like a shiver down your spine because you're like, oh God, that was scary.
Yeah, and one of those characters was probably one of my avatars, just out wreaking havoc is was my guess. So you next,
That's when I killed it and it disappeared for
good.
me.
That's good. I hope it's dead somewhere. It's probably for the best, because otherwise, I had this feeling, and now again, I don't buy into the superstitious stuff at all. People on my channel know me that I tend to approach all this stuff with a science-minded attitude as much as I can, as much as my experiences will allow. Let me put it that way. But yeah, my feeling was when I released this entity was that I had this sense that it was going to go off and do other terrible things somehow in some other realm. I don't know.
Yeah. Went next door to your neighbor's house and took over them for a bit.
Right. Who knows, and people, and the thing is that people have asked me on channels like, well, what do you think about like, possession and demonic possession and whatnot? And I will still always come back to the attitude of, the best way to not get possessed by a demon is to not believe in demonic possession.
Don't give it the power, or
don't give it the power.
Door to go through, we talked about that. So
exactly. Yeah.
but
Don't open that door.
I did have a guy reach out to me on Twitter. I've had a few people go like out of nowhere, hey, how can I have lucid sex dreams? Like I want to like do this. And I mean, maybe like if you're a sex addict, you could easily become a lucid dream sex addict too.
And sure, yeah.
Almost like lose sight of like the lucid dreaming. Like I feel like there's just a wheel of things that you can do, and the sex is part of that wheel. And I see a lot of people narrow-minded to, I must do that. And I'm like, oh, hopefully you get some, but I can't tell them how or the reason why. That you can set the intention and it'll probably happen.
It would seem to me that ultimately it's going to keep falling apart. Like the dream will continue to fall apart. That's my only thing that's what I noticed again, just judging from when I was younger, when I was like, again, going through puberty and whatnot, young boy, that was how I was. I was just mostly not always. I mean, there were a few dreams I was kind of like exploring other things, but most of it, I was looking for sex for the most part, or some kind of sexual stimulation. And but it was because I was so hyper focused on, just chasing after something. I didn't know how to, there was no meditative quality. I didn't know what the power was to be in the moment and be, centered or balanced or anything like that. I was just, hunting on some level. And so I think when you're always pushing your energy forward into some, like, I want this, it's like you're always the dream tends to dismantle. Right. It seems like it tends to fall apart. So it's like, it's going to be self-defeating, I would say.
It is. And when you say the prey, finish on that too, is I think of just watching Discovery Channel. You have the alpha male of the walruses that mate with all of the women because he's got the best genetics. It's kind of just instilled in us. So
So before we wrap this up, do you have any suggestions or any kind of advice at all for people who want to get into lucid dreaming? Anything that you suggest to, that'll kind of get them on that path? People who they want to have a lucid dream, but they're not really sure how to get into it. Any advice for folks out there?
My advice from personal experience is to record your dreams to help retain the memory from it.
Yes.
And also finding a personalized reality check, whether it starts with your hands or you wear a bracelet every single day, something that's unique to you.
Yes.
And consistency. I've heard some of my friends said I've been trying for a couple of weeks and nothing's happened. And on the other hand, I have a friend who said she started having lucid dreams because I would talk with her about it.
Yes.
So stimulating a conversation, making it normal is a good way to start. And active meditation throughout the day. Just take a moment and think, if I was dreaming, what would I do? And just finding something that fits your shoe.
I couldn't agree more with all of those. All of those are apps. Yes. I ditto on all of that. 100%. Yeah. That's what you need to do. Yeah. And I've said, like, even if you're not just doing the reality checks, just watching shows like this or reading books about the topic, that helps because it gets your mind moving in that area, and you'll start thinking about that. Hopefully, at night when you're in the dream state, it'll kind of kick in, like, oh yeah, if you're like, maybe I should stop and figure out what the hell is really going on here. So
Exactly. And
yeah,
just not giving up, because I've had plenty of dry spells before too. And
absolutely.
just it'll come back. And sometimes it'll be full force or it'll be just sporadic through the next few months. Everyone's different. So just kind of
Totally.
finding a personalized dream experience for yourself.
Yes. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for talking with us. I really appreciate it. That was a great conversation. Thanks for sharing all your wonderful stories. Please come on another time. Well, maybe we'll talk about something slightly different down the road. But
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see it.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.